Hello and welcome back to the Fantasy Den, um, brought to you by the AAW Network. I'm obviously Sam. You'll have seen me around in most episodes from the very, very beginning. And this week we have a slight change up. We've got our usual co-host in Liam, and you'll also see that we've been uh, graced with the presence of our producer, our big, big producer and founder and all
Yeah.
things titular with the AW Network Fletch. Um, how are we doing tonight? Are we having a good evening? Are we glad that it's soon to be the end of the week?
I very much am glad it's soon to be the end of the week. Get me on a plane on Sunday. Off on holiday.
Where are you off
Ooh,
to?
Well, it's a secret. I can't tell. I'm
Ah,
surprising the missus. So
right,
ooh.
okay.
she'll be upstairs listening. Trying to
Right,
find out. She doesn't have a clue.
I'm with you. I'm with you. Um, it's no,
So Blackpool.
yeah,
Yeah, it is. It's a long weekend in Blackpool.
Yeah.
yeah. I think it's unnecessary to fly there, but if you
Well,
wanted it,
got
if
to
you,
treat people, haven't you?
um, not here to judge. Um, but no, it's good. It's good. I'm glad to be back. Obviously, it's been a few weeks since I've seen you all. Well, Sam, I see you just about every other day.
Yeah.
But it's been a couple of weeks since I've seen Liam and Kian as well. So nice to be back. Elevated from the practice squad while Kian's on injured reserve. So
On concussion protocol.
Yeah, he is. Yeah,
yes.
quite literally.
Unfortunately, but I'm hoping that clearly I've made an impact in practice during the week and earned my roster spot at being elevated from the practice squad. So proud moment for me here.
Yes. On the topic of uh, being on the roster, this week we are going to be looking at the top five or predicting who we think is going to be in the top five positions from a fantasy perspective, um, from a way too early point of view. A lot of these will probably end up changing, but I always think it's funny just to see where our heads are in terms of going into the season. Probably do another one maybe just before the season if we think things are going to change, and then seeing how it completely bottoms out at the end of the season, because guaranteed at least one of these 20 players that we are going to be picking will get injured, as inevitably it always happens.
Yep.
It does also seem to be happening more and more, and it's killing a lot of my fantasy teams because I pick far too many of the same players. Um, Before we do get into it, though, obviously I do want to make sure that obviously everyone can follow us on all the social medias, all on the Network socials, on Twitter or X, formerly known as Twitter, Instagram, etc., and as well as joining our free to join Discord server, which we're all in, and we just kind of talk nonsense most of the time. It usually gets a bit busier during the season. At the moment, it's very very quiet, but join in early, get to know the people, and you'll get to see us. You can find all the links to all of our pages and everything in the description below. If you're on YouTube, there somewhere down below, somewhere around there. If you're listening to us on Spotify or Apple or any other providers that you do choose to listen to your podcasts through, you'll find them within the app. So, obviously, the big thing that we're going to be looking at is different positions. We are going to go through each player position that we would normally see in fantasy. So, quarterback, running back, tight end, and wide receiver. And as we go through, obviously, I'll read through we'll start with who was the last year's top five for each position, and then we'll just have a discussion around who we think is possibly going to be in. Give a few explanations around them. I'll probably do it as a round robin, just pick each one of you, and give you a list, and then we'll talk about them as we go through. You can give it a little bit of an explanation as to why you've got people in certain positions. And then and what we might do is we'll see how we get on. We may try and formulate a joint list if we've got any agreements, and then we'll see where we get with them. And yeah, so what we'll do is we'll start off with the most important position. So again, just to reiterate, so that everyone's aware of how we've sort of done this, this is done based upon a standard PPR league in terms of the scoring positions. So again, it will be different if you've got tight end premiums or non-PPR leagues or half PPR leagues. They'll all be different. We're just going off the standard PPR. It just makes life easier, and it is kind of the most popular way to format fantasy football these days. So just quickly running through last year's top 5 quarterbacks. Number 1, unsurprisingly, was Josh Allen. Number 2 was Drake May. Number 3 was Matthew Stafford. Number 4 was Trevor Lawrence. And number 5 was Dak Prescott. So obviously there's quite a few names within that you would normally expect to see, but unfortunately are not in there, obviously due to injuries and whatever. We'll start with Liam.
Yeah.
What have you got for your top 5 predictions for 2026 for quarterbacks?
Yeah, so unsurprisingly, at number 1, it's Josh Allen. I don't know if we need to talk too much about it. I think he's a pretty solid player. He's usually on the pitch. I don't think he's had many injuries throughout his career. He's a mobile quarterback, plenty of touchdowns on the ground, but plenty in the air as well. And I think the one thing that from last season, I think his wide receiver room's got better. So therefore, obviously helps the quarterback out quite a lot. So I'll breeze on to the next. I've gone Lamar Jackson at 2. I think a bounce back year, hopefully injury free. I think if Lamar's injury free, I think he's usually there in the top 5. Also, addition of 2 young pass catchers in the draft, that's going to help him as well. Matthew Stafford at 3. I kind of think a repeat from last year is on the cards. The Rams obviously have a plan, and it worked last year. It was very close to getting to the Super Bowl, and I think they'll be right up there again. So I can't see much changing. Obviously, there's a question mark around his injury, but he sort of just battled through last year, and he was amazing. So I reckon he'll do similar. Number 4, return of Joe Burrow into the top 5. Again, if he stays injury free, the weapons he has, I think he's a shoo-in to be there or thereabouts. And number 5, I've gone for an outside bet here, a bit of a dart throw, and the pun is intended. Jackson Dart. I think Jackson Dart could sneak in there. He's got a lot's got to go right for him to get in there, but he's a lot of rushing on the ground, a lot of touchdowns on the ground last year. He's got a very good young receiver core and talent pool around him. His current ADP is actually QB7, which I was kind of surprised about. In Dynasty, that is mainly. But yeah, I think Jackson Dart, if everything went right, I think he could sneak himself into the top 5. So it's a bit out.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, I think this is the interesting part. I mean, obviously we talked about the ones that were there before, but obviously there's a few in there that I think you tend to find quarterbacks tend to switch around, and obviously are very much dependent on injuries as well as various other things as well. Fletch, what have you got as your top 5?
I'm going to blow you both away here and say that my top 2 are exactly the same as Liam's. I know they're very contentious top 2 anyway. But Josh Allen number 1, Lamar Jackson number 2. I would have had them flipped if it wasn't for Lamar Jackson's injury last year and just wanting to get him back in. And Liam, as you mentioned, they've added 2 brand new pass catchers, young pass catchers. The reason Lamar Jackson tended to be number 1 was because of his ability on the ground and picking up, it's two and a half times the amount of points for a yard on the ground than it is for a yard in the air for a quarterback. So, I think we can see Lamar Jackson maybe slinging the rock a little bit more, getting it out there with and having a couple more receivers to trust will reduce maybe some of those yards with his legs. Hopefully just a little bit. I say hopefully, but yeah, hope that might just kind of reduce the output from him, which will see Josh Allen, in my opinion, Yeah, be the number one. In number three, I had Drake May. After last year, I think he continues to kind of build up from last year and build on from last year. The defense, let's face it, got the Patriots through most of the season, but Drake May continued to put up quite a decent amount of points. He had great EPA and all that sort of stuff. So I think the Patriots offense, and potentially with the addition of a gentleman over from Philadelphia, might really boost his stock. I think 4 and 5 was always a little bit of a weird one. I like the Jackson Dart shout. It's not my shout, but I do like that shout. Um, it hurts me to say it. I think Caleb Williams potentially at number 4. If he can sort out some of the like being good on script, I think we start to see more completions and more yards from him, as well as obviously the talent with his legs and his ability to improvise off script, which seems to be the best place that he performs is off script. And then number 5 is a really weird one. Knowing what might come up later, I'm not gonna go rotating with who's my number 5. I'm not gonna go with one of those because I know their name's gonna come up later. But Joe, I said Joe, no, Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow will go in number 5 for me. Because when fit and healthy, truly fit and healthy, I think he's in the conversation with Allen and Jackson. Unfortunately, he's just not as consistently fit and healthy. I find the Stafford one interesting. Obviously, traditionally not. Maybe a few years ago was traditionally a top fantasy quarterback, but with the addition of guys who move with the legs, obviously not so much as much a top 5 in recent years. But last year he was just so good.
Yeah,
just so good.
Yeah. So funnily enough, the top 3, the top 2 I do have the same. The only thing is I've got them switched around. So I've gone for Lamar Jackson at number 1 and Josh Allen at number 2. The only reason I think that is because they're still blooding. They're obviously gonna have some new wide receivers, so I don't think he's necessarily going to be throwing it as much. But I have a feeling that with the change in head coach, I think that they'll go back to a more traditional Ravens offense and use his legs a lot more, because one of the things that we tend to see in recent years is the move away from the run game, and it was so infuriating watching when you had 2 of the best big men running at the back, like with Lamar Jackson and Derrick Henry, and then they just didn't use it. They just completely moved away from it. So I'd quite like to. I think they'll go back to that model, and I can see him picking up a lot of points on the ground, getting a few touchdowns and things like that. I do think it'll be tight, and to be honest, either way, I think those are going to be 1 and 2, no matter what. Funnily enough, 3, I've actually got Matt Stafford as well. I just think it's purely because that they like to get to the 1, the 2, the 3 yard line and just sling it to Devontae Adams or one of the tight ends. So I just see that it's just going to be a replica of what we've seen. They've had barely any changeover. The only real big change that we've seen is Tutu Atwell's no longer there, and they're going to be adding probably a mixture of Xavier Smith, Jordan Whittington, etc., which makes me think they'll go back to a more 13 personnel team anyway. But I just think that although we do have a good run game, we do rely on Stafford's arm. And I think that with the likes of, Puka and Devontae Adams and that there, I just think that it'll just be a repeat of last year. Maybe not, as many numbers, but I think it'll still be, 40 plus touchdowns.
Yeah, that was a cheat code for the Rams last year. Get within the 5 and then a back shoulder fade to Devontae Adams, touchdown every single time.
I think, did he have something like 13, 14 touchdowns within the 5 yard line or something like that?
Something like that, yeah.
Ridiculous. I just think that, if it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of thing. I think they'll just go for the same thing. In 4, I've got Joe Burrow. And again, I think this is going to be just a case of that he needs to prove that he is the guy again. And I think with going into this season, he is obviously going to be fully fit. They have fixed some of the O-line issues. I'm not saying they've completely fixed it because, let's be honest, it's the Bengals. They don't know how to actually have an O-line. But I think that that's going to be a big thing, is that when Joe Burrow stays fit for a season, he is a top 5 quarter. He's like say he's a top 3 quarterback, top 4. So that he's an elite quarterback. So for me, I'm going to have Burrow at 4, and then at 5. I've ummed and ahed between 3 players, and I've crossed them all out 3 times and written them again. The 3 that I had were Caleb Williams, Bo Nix, because let's be honest, with the addition of Jalen Waddle, I think is phenomenal for him. But the guy that I've actually gone with is Jalen Hurts, and I think he's going to have a bit of a resurgence. Again, one of the things that we saw with the OC that was there last year, after they lost, was it Kellen Moore they had before?
Yeah.
They went away from the run game a lot, so we didn't get to see a lot of Jalen Hurts' rush ability. We didn't obviously see a lot of Saquon. And I think that with the fact that they're obviously looking to move on AJ Brown and potentially going to the Patriots, and they're obviously going to be blooding Mekhi Lemon this year. Really, he's probably going to end up being the wide receiver too. I just think that we could see a lot more of Jalen Hurts, and I think that I think they're going to start doing a few more trick plays, which looks like a tush push, but then moves out of it. And, like what they started to do where, he rolls out and runs to the side. So I think we could see a return of Jalen Hurts in the top 5. But I think that fourth, fifth spot is kind of where it's open to. I think that, and, we've seen sort of loads of different players that sort of fall into that category. And, I was surprised none of us went for Patrick Mahomes, but I think that's just because we don't know when he's going to be returning. I know he wants to be back for week 1, but is he going to be back for week 1? So I think that one's maybe a bit of a 50-50 on whether he might be in that. So that's why I left him out anyway.
Yeah, I think Mahomes, for me, I think even if he plays, you're probably going to get 60-70% Patrick Mahomes for at least 2, maybe 3 weeks, and that might just be enough for him to not really be that fantasy relevant to start with. And also, I think Andy Reid's great at performing a script to win a game rather than make your stars shine. And the big thing about Mahomes, why? Because he kind of was off the fantasy radar for me for a few years, but last year because he was using his legs more, and obviously with the injury he's just got, it's potential that's going to be a lot slower this year. Maybe the first half of the season he might not be. He might be going back to being a pocket passer. So yeah,
they did also bring in
Mahomes
Kenneth Walker as well. So they brought Kenneth Walker in. He's obviously going to play a part in the run game, which that'll take a lot away from Mahomes in terms of his rushing ability. I think they'll use Kenneth Walker and a few of the other pieces. Emmett Johnson, he's there as well, isn't he? So
yeah, he's just done
probably
there.
use those a bit.
I like your pick at 5 in Hurts because I've got him in a couple of leagues, and up until last year he was so solid. He never had a bad game. He also didn't really have the spike games or the 40-point games, but he never had a bad game. But last year that sort of dipped off. But I do think that was not necessarily a Jalen Hurts problem. It was more like an Eagles offense. They just weren't in sync, and they didn't have a rhythm or a flow, or even it didn't look like they had a game plan. So if they've got that back now, then I love that pick because he's a proper solid top 5 quarterback.
Yeah, I think the problem with him is like I say last year that offense just looked completely disjointed. I don't think that the OC worked there, and I think just the pieces that they've already added, I just think that they are gonna be a little bit more in tune in terms of the way that team work. Obviously, the biggest issue was the fact that that O-line did lose a fair few pieces and wasn't exactly the same as it's been. But I think it should, they should work back towards where they were.
Yeah.
So I think
I have a question. I have a
Yeah.
question before we move on to the next position. Have you guys got an outside shot? Let's put a little bit of like money on the line kind of thing. Who's your outside shot to get in the top five as a quarterback? Who do you think like who have you guys got in that list?
I'll stick with who I had before, and that's Bo Nix. I
Yeah,
know he was seventh last year, but I just think that he took a lot of stick for the team not being as offensively like good as what they could be. They the run game didn't work. They didn't really score like major points in every single game. But I think just with the fact that obviously Jalen Waddle's gone into that, he's probably likely going to be the wide receiver one. Um, Cortland Sutton's still there, and I think he's a big piece. I just think that the run game still doesn't look strong. RJ Harvey has got a lot to prove. I think this year is a potential breakout year.
yeah,
So for me, he's my outsider to potentially get in the top five.
Yeah, for me it was Trevor Lawrence. Just the growth in which we saw under Liam Cohen in year one. And not even just the growth in year one, the growth from like there was about 3 weeks into the season, 4 weeks into the season. I know we spoke about it quite a lot on Hurdle the Line last year, Sam, when it happened, when even 3, 4 weeks in when um Liam Cohen and Trevor Lawrence had the little tiff after Lawrence had passed it and Liam Cohen was there shouting at him like put it on his chest and Trevor Lawrence just go away. Um I think just the growth in which we've seen even just from that specific point in such a short amount of time as well, he'd become a much better professional quarterback. And I think one more off season with Liam Cohen, one more off season of improving and getting the playbook better. He's someone I really think can take a huge leap this year again. Um, and potentially that would very much show up in his fantasy numbers as well.
yeah. He certainly did look better. He certainly finally looked like he was fulfilling his potential that everyone's hoped, and he's got the weapons around him now. Mine's also a guy who just crept into the top five last year, but I've just looked at his ADP, and his current ADP is 15, and that's Dak Prescott. He kind of is the forgotten man. And year in, year out, he just performs. I think in every year, other than when he's been injured, he's been a top 10 fantasy quarterback. He's got weapons around him, and I just think Dak. I don't know why he's that. He's like that unpopular pick. Nobody seems to be like wanting him, but every single season he shows up.
I
So
think
it
that's
doesn't
mainly
really
because
matter.
people don't like the Cowboys.
Yeah,
Yeah, probably
I
it's
was
by
gonna
proxy,
say
isn't it?
there might be a Cowboys element in that, to be fair.
Yeah. And I mean, you are right. Like, you look at, if you go through, apart from in 2018, where he finished 14th, where he played a full season, he finished seventh, 10th, second, eighth, third, and sixth. So he's always been in and around that sort of top 10. And I,
Yeah,
I, I think QB 15 is very low. And I think that might just be because, again, an element of he's getting a bit older and maybe people aren't trusting him. But I also think it's down to the fact that there are other QBs that I think are being rated higher, especially in sort of dynasty leagues as well. I think it's just
Mhm.
he's a good quarterback, but he's not one that you can long term be placing your hat on. Whereas
yeah.
you've got the likes of probably Jackson Dart, probably maybe a little bit of, you know, maybe a Caleb Williams. I think they're not necessarily going to score as many points, but will inevitably be more of a long term
T-
view.
Tyler Shook as well, I think would be one of those you can throw into that conversation of he's seriously improved at the Saints. The Saints have had a really good really good year or two now in terms of getting talent back through the door. And
They've got the
dare
second
I
easiest schedule this year as
they
well.
got second easiest schedule, and they added someone whom like he was kind of my guy in the draft. They added Jordan Tyson, who I do think is going to be an excellent wide receiver one in this league. I mean Tyler Shook as well. When you look at like dynasty and things like that, I can see why there were other guys over Dak. But when you're talking 1 year redraft leagues, I think I think Dak kind of gets put in I reckon the conversation of like your Brock Purdy's as well
Yeah,
a lot. excuse me, generally be in the conversations with the Brock Purdy's, the Bo Nixes, those kind of guys who
Yeah,
just
sort of
seem
like
to,
solid quarterbacks, but nothing that you would, they're never going to blow the roof off. They're just constant 25 pointers.
Yeah.
yeah. And how often do we consider? I mean, you guys will probably do it a bit more than I will, especially over the last few years in terms of fantasy, because as much as I play it, I don't do so much around it. How much of fantasy rankings, especially when it comes down to quarterbacks, is just perception? So, for example, I'd use maybe like a Jared Goff who continuously puts up good numbers on the year. Obviously, they're not great fantasy numbers, but they're generally good numbers. He's generally considered to be a very good quarterback in the league, but obviously doesn't go very high because the perception and the perception of who you are and what you do. I mean, Dak Prescott isn't a flashy player. He isn't running for 20 yards on a regular occasion, whereas you look at Jackson Dart, who gets a bit more um I was gonna say notoriety then. It's not the word, but a bit more attention. Um
Mm.
a bit more, few more eyes on him in general, just because of the style of play and the name he has kind of given himself. How
I
much of
think
it
it
also
also
comes
comes
down to
down
that?
to, I think it also comes down to the fact that fantasy, certainly from a QB perspective, I think fantasy has kind of evolved a bit because of the fact that we have the PPR leagues. But I think people naturally will look at things like obviously your Lamars and your Allens and your Darts, where rushing is becoming such a big part of the QB game. That I think that that's starting to take precedent, and where you've got QBs like Matt Stafford, like probably Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he's not a massive rusher. Dak Prescott, Brock Purdy. So they're not rushing quarterbacks, and they're not
Yeah,
dual threat quarterbacks. So I think they kind of get forgotten about, and that's why the likes of when you see a Matt Stafford in the top 10 or in the top five, you think, well, how is he getting more points you know than I don't know Josh Allen, for example? I know he didn't, or say Jalen Hurts, and it's like,
yeah.
well, because he's throwing 40 touchdowns, and that's kind of his bread and butter. But it's just, I think
240
it's
points
all
there alone.
perception. It
It,
is, it is just
yeah.
all perception.
I think the other aspect is someone like, I mean, a Goff's a really good shout, and Brock Purdy. Both of them two have, like, we're going to touch on some of their teammates, but they've got immense running backs. So when
Mm.
you've got a really top running back, you take away likelihood you're going to take away points away from your quarterback. So when you're talking about some of these other guys like Drake May, for example, had a great year last year and never had this standout running back. I know Travion Henderson towards the back end of the season was showing up, but he never had this guy who's going to run 150 yards and get 2 touchdowns on the ground. So therefore, Drake May
Yeah.
gets the points. Whereas Jared
Mm.
Goff's very boom and bust. Some weeks he has 4 touchdowns, and some weeks he doesn't have any because he doesn't
Yeah.
need to do it.
Yeah. Are
Yeah,
you trying to tell me we call him Jared Wheels for nothing in Detroit?
yeah. It's more ironic, I think, more than anything.
Absolutely not.
I've I've seen that guy run. He is not a good runner.
Um,
He looks like Jack Sparrow trying to run.
I don't think it's ironic at all. It's Jared Wheels or Jared Vick. He gets called in Detroit, which I think
Mm.
is perfectly apt for his play style for the 2 yards he gets a year.
So, whilst we're on the topic of rushing and running, let's go on to running backs. So, I think again, this is probably going to be. I mean, we're probably going to likely have, I think, some of the same players. I think the order could be completely different.
Yeah.
So, Fletch, we'll start with you this time because I know who you're going to put at number one.
Um, yeah. Um, I'll go Jahmyr Gibbs number one.
Shock.
Bijan Robinson number two. But like to be fair, it's a 1A, 1B. I don't see it as a 1 and 2, it's a 1A and 1B.
Mm.
Um, and even A and B is not a ranking, it's just a oh damn it. It's an alphabetical order via last name. So Gibbs just so happens to come first. Jonathan Taylor in three.
Ooh.
He continues to pick up off last year and be just really, really good and dominant for the Colts. Devin A Chain Achan, sorry, at number 4. Obviously you spoke at length, Liam, a number of times of with the situation in the Dolphins and how I'll try again in English. Devon Achan will probably have to shoulder a lot of the burden for that offense in the year, but let's not pretend that he's not talented enough to do that. He's very much talented enough to do that. And then in number 5, I have Ashton Genty.
I did have him on my list originally for a bit.
Although, to be fair, like, I'm specifically leaving someone out in a Christian McCaffrey.
Because I'm going to talk about him.
Because I'm gonna let Liam have his moment and talk about him. Exactly what I was gonna say there, Liam. So
thank you, mate. Appreciate that. So is that my cue to then step in and do mine? So obviously some of the same names. I haven't got Johnny Taylor in it, and that's purely down to his quarterback at the start of the season. I'm not sure Jones will be back, and if he is, I don't know what that's going to look like because coming off the injury he's got. So, but I think Jonathan Taylor's a phenomenal talent. I've gone CMC number 1, just because he did it last year, and I don't think a lot's going to change this year. The only thing that's different effectively is Jennings is out, Evans is in, so I don't see a lot of difference there on the receiving room. The rookie Stribling, I'm not sure what he's going to do year 1. CMC is a year older, and obviously, if you're looking at his past, he's on his injury year, so he does a top 2 year injured, top 2 year injured. So let's hope he breaks that. If he stays fit, and we can only assume he's going to stay fit at the moment, I think he just repeats last season. I think and if anything, he's probably a little bit more efficient on the ground because he was a bit lacking last year. He was 3.9 per carry, which is unlike him. Then I've gone Jahmyr Gibbs ahead of Bijan. The only reason I've done that is, again, talking about the quarterback in Atlanta, I'm not sure who that's going to be. I'm not sure how effective that's going to be. So whereas the Lions are set, Jared Goff's going to be good. And the other fact is Monty's gone and the replacement isn't Monty. It's Isaiah Pacheco. And I don't think he's going to do what Monty did and have his own drives. I think he'll literally just spell Gibbs now.
yeah.
Then I've gone Devon Achan at 4. I think he'll be everything in the offense. The downside to that is if the defense can stop him, then obviously there could be quite a few short drives, but he has got that ability to break away at any time. And then I've gone Saquon Barkley bouncing back at number 5, and I think this might be the last year he'll be in my top 5 ranking, but I think he'll bounce back compared to what he was last year. He was poor for his standards last year, but as was the Eagles. So therefore, if they bounce back, I think he'll be very good again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just to kind of, again, I didn't mention at the start, the running back situation in 2025 was Christian McCaffrey at 1, Bijan Robinson at 2, Jahmyr Gibbs at 3, Jonathan Taylor at 4, and then Devon Achan at 5. In terms of my list, I've got kind of basically the same players as Julian, but in slightly different order. So I've gone with Jahmyr Gibbs number 1. The reason why I picked him at number 1 is basically the example you've given. There's no Monty there. I think the OC that was there before, I think, was trying too much and just went away from what he needed to. I think in the game, I think Jahmyr Gibbs only had 67% snaps, which compared to all the other running backs around him is very low. I think he's going to be more towards the 80-90 mark, I think, this year, which, again, is just going to mean he's going to get more points. He has the threat in the running game and the passing game. So, again, that's going to be key to, I think, opening up his points. So I've gone with Jahmyr Gibbs, and I think he's, for me, I just think he is. He had his down year this last year, and I think he's going to bounce back with the most points. In second, I've gone with the guy who I think will be just on his coattails in Christian McCaffrey. I just think, again, like you said, I think he's going to just basically have to do what he did last year, because of the fact I know they've got Mike Evans, I know they've still got George Kittle, but they've brought in Stribling. I think his main job is basically going to be a blocking wide receiver, which to me, drafting up to pick him makes me immediately think they're going to use McCaffrey out of the backfield by passing to him a lot. I also think it's just, the way that Shanahan runs his offense is very much lean on McCaffrey and Kittle and use the others as your surprise weapons, and that's where I think they'll use the likes of Pearsall and Mike Evans, because again, I know obviously Mike Evans is he's an elite wide receiver, but I just think that he's done his X number of years getting 1,000 yards, and obviously finished last year. We have majority of the year out injured. I think we're just starting to see the back end of his career now, and I don't think he'll be as potent as we've seen him over the years. He'll probably still end up putting up 800 to 1,100 yards, but I don't see him being the main target. I still see it being McCaffrey. In 3, I've gone for Bijan Robinson. I mean, he's my guy. I know I'm not a Falcons fan, but he's my guy. Nearly 1,500 yards rushing last year, over 800 receiving. My only issue is that I don't trust the Falcons, and I don't trust that the offense, or the head coach or the offense coordinator. I don't know how they're going to scheme up this year. And notoriously, he's been underused. I think obviously now Algiers gone, maybe he'll get used more. But again, they've got so many weapons on that offense that I think it kind of takes away from him. But I also think that they're going to be, again, as they have been over the last few years, chasing games because they're just not picking up enough points early. And then they're going to have to start throwing the ball a bit more and trying to get it down the field. So I think that could be his downfall. And then fourth, I've got Devon Achane for pretty much the same reasons. He's going to have to basically be the everything for the Dolphins this year. And then at 5, I've gone with Saquon. I think he's going to have a bounce back year. They're going to use him a bit more compared to what they used him last year. I also think they're going to have to rely on him a bit more because although they've got weapons with the ball, they need to get that running game going in order to be able to then get Jalen Hurts the ability to run as well, and also get him to throw the ball. So, very similar sort of players. I do think we've kind of, I do think we're quite lucky in the sense of at least for the top 10 running backs. I think they're always there or thereabouts unless they're injured. Obviously, I think, Jonathan Taylor's going to be up there. Probably James Cook, I know one we've not talked about, probably going to be in around the top 10.
Yeah.
Kyron Williams, Derrick Henry, Chase Brown, these are guys that we've seen in multiple years be in and around the top 10. Someone who I mentioned, I had him in my 5th spot and I moved him out, was Ashton Genty. And I put him in there originally because I've been very critical from the start about where Genty was getting picked in a lot of leagues last year. I think he was even being touted as the 2nd or 3rd running back off the board, and I was like, "What are we doing here? He's a rookie." At the Raiders as well. It wasn't like he was stepping in to be the number 1 running back at I don't know, the Rams or whatever. Not. It's not like he's going into a team that's ready and available. This is a shit team.
Yeah.
It's a lot better now, but this was a shit team, and he still did well. He finished 10th overall, 11th overall in PPR last year at running back. So he still put up good solid points, and he wasn't available for a lot of, or he wasn't being utilized a lot of it. I do think he's probably going to be a lot better this year. I think that with the signings that they've made in the off season, I think that, and obviously the draft and that, I think that they could potentially need to use Genty a lot more. Obviously, we don't know what the situation is with the quarterback just yet. I think going into the off season, it's kind of a case of it's Cousins versus Mendoza, and they'll make a decision later down the line. But again, does that mean that he's going to necessarily use Genty a lot, or are they going to be with Bowers back from injury, are they going to use him a lot more? So I think there's a lot to sort of be said as to what they're going to do.
Yeah.
I think it's fair to say that they've got a better head coach as well because Pete
Mm.
Carroll was a question mark. Like he did a lot of questionable things last season, um, and Kubiak going in there, he's obviously just come off being the offensive coordinator for the Super Bowl champions. So like obviously he knows what he wants, and he's obviously had a run game that worked in the for Seattle. So he's obviously going to utilize Genty a lot more than was last year.
It'd be
Um,
interesting to see how they use Mike Washington though as the backup for him, because
Yeah.
obviously that's quite a it's quite a statement to go and take a running back like Mike Washington and potentially have him as the backup to Genty. And obviously if we're talking about Kubiak and the way he kind of ran his running game, is he had a 1-2 situation with Walker and Charbonnet. So it'd be interesting to see how they use Washington. I've kind of tried to pick him up where I can in the second round, in a lot of second rounds, because I think he could get used quite a lot as like a supporting cast for Genty. So
Well, Kubiak's also said he wants to have a 1-2. I mean, I don't think it'd be the same split as they had in Seattle because I think that's who he had. He had two very good running backs, but I think he has said he wants to have a 1-2. So Washington coming in obviously is the two. So that'll be my only question mark on Genty was, is he going to get the 80% snaps that you need
mm.
to be a top five? I've got the same question. I'm going to do the same question for every position, by the way. Who's your outside shot to come in to the top five?
I think mine's going to be, and I think this is an interesting one because this is a guy that annoys the hell out of me of how good he can be, and that's Javonte Williams at the Cowboys, because I drafted him a lot when he came out of college, and obviously he joined the Broncos and had flashes of brilliance, but was never consistent with it. And then he went to the Cowboys and kind of found a bit of consistency in his game. He still only managed 68% of snaps all year, which I think quite low.
Yeah.
But I think, with the fact that Rico Dowdle's no longer there, Jaden Blue hasn't shown a lot. Um, I think he could be one to watch because, again, I don't think the supporting cast in Dallas, in terms from a running game perspective, is necessarily good enough to keep him out of that. So he could be one to watch because, again, he showed elements of brilliance last year. I think you look at his game logs, and ranking wise, he was, there was fifth, fourth, 14th, 6th, 10th, 13th in terms of some of the games. So the first two, he hit it off to a flyer in the first two games, and then it kind of died down a bit towards the end. But he's someone who I'm quite high on, and I
Yeah.
always will be, annoyingly.
Yeah. One of the ones I'm kind of looking at the rotation I have again for 4 and 5 when I did my top five. I've got a genuine outside shot that I think's a bit of a fun one. Could be, well, in Chuba Hubbard.
Yeah. I like that.
He's often picked around RB 25-ish area. So you're talking, and the kind of the general gist of the outside shot is like, but this is a bit more than an outside shot. This one's he ends up top five, and you go, how the hell did that happen? But just again with the evolution of the Panthers offense, and I have loved watching Chuba Hubbard at times over the years. Um, I just want to see him if he can get back to the forms of old, then he really is a fantastic running back asset, and the Carolina Panthers could really, really, really use him, and open up the playbook as well if he turns up. So A really outside shot for me would be Chuba Hubbard. However, if I want to go with something a little bit closer to home and a little bit more likely, it'd be maybe a Chase Brown. Um, from the Bengals, I think he's going to be an interesting one. With the Bengals are clearly trying to do something. The Bengals always think they're doing what's right, but internally, what they think's right is normally externally something very, very embarrassing, and we all laugh at. They're clearly trying to do something, and Joe Burrow might need to lean on his running back a little bit more because if he ends up with another season where he barely makes the playoffs, crashes out with the playoffs, also spends quite a bit of time out injured, he I think the conversation now is how far he's away from checking out of football. Um,
Yeah.
so I'd look to the Bengals maybe leaning on Chase Brown a little bit more as well to take some of that load and some of that pressure off the Bengals. So he'll start seeing more touches, hope more carries, and obviously that then translates into fantasy points.
I like Chase Brown as well. I'm sort of scooping him where I can in Dynasty. I mean, last year's ranks, he started the season horribly, and everybody thought he was maybe that was him done. He was 21, 34, 48, 37, 28, 20, and 17 after 7 games. And then he was 5, 8, 15, 13, 15, 8, 19, 2, 3, 9. So I do think like if his form for the second half of the season comes through, he could definitely be knocking on the door
Yeah.
of top five. I've gone for Ken Walker. I know I've mentioned in another episode how much I'm a big fan of that signing. Um, Obviously he's got to stay fit, but he's in an offense that's exciting. He's not got a lot behind him really. I mean, Emmett Johnson probably slots in as the RB2 there, and he's a rookie, so he could end up with everything in that Chiefs running room. And if he does that, I think he could very easily be the top five, or he could be knocking on the door for top five.
Yeah, there's one other that I wanted to mention is someone in terms of a real outside chance, is Amari and Hampton.
Yeah,
I think he could he if he can one, if he can stay fit, and two, if the Chargers O line can stay fit, I think he has a real big chance of breaking out because again, there's no competition in the backfield. I think you look at their others, you've got Keaton Mitchell,
Fidel.
Imani Vidal,
Yeah. He did well
Alex
last year, though,
Ingold.
to be fair. And I think Vidal shows what Hampton could be because Vidal's
Yeah.
never been a running back that anybody was hot on. And then he managed to be very good last year. So you'd taken a better quality player in Hampton and putting him in that situation, you'd expect him to do well. I think the
Yeah,
only
and I just
downside is his injury last year. You don't really see what he was.
yeah, but I think I mean, he started again. He didn't start off particularly well. He only managed 8 points and three and a half in his first two games. But then against Denver, he scored 23.9 points, and against the Giants, it was 27.5 points. So he was RB4 and RB7 those individual weeks.
Yeah.
And even you go back to the week 17 game against Houston, he finished with 20 points. So we started to see a little bit more of what he's capable of, and that was with an O line that was, you know, non-existent. So if the likes of Joel and that can stay fit, I think he can stay fit. I think he stands a real chance. And I also think probably someone who, again, going back to QB, someone we seem to forget about a lot is Justin Herbert. And
Mm.
I think that's just again because of the fact that his team is so riddled with injuries that he never really has a chance. And that, again, if the O line can stay fit, we could see potentially someone like a Herbert slotted into that question. Um, but yeah, those are the sort of the I think that Amari and Hampton's a very much outside shot. And there's a lot that I think needs to go his way for him to be even considered top five.
Yeah.
Um,
In redraft, I'd be very excited if I can get him as my RB2, maybe RB2. I think I'd be pretty excited with that. RB1, you're a little bit nervous because
mhm.
we haven't seen him play a full season in the NFL yet. But certainly
Yeah, I think
RB2, you'd be very excited with that prospect.
yeah, I think if I was going to take him at running back two, I'd want to make sure I had a running back three that was going to play as well. So I think I'd be sacrificing potentially elite wide receivers or a better QB for him to be my RB2. That'd be my
Yeah.
only concern. But I think there's plenty of other players, someone like a Karma Nungai or um, what's his name, Croxley, whatever he's called, the Krosky Merritt.
Yeah, Bill
Um,
Krosky.
yeah, but
One I like as well that I never mentioned, and I'm really high on him, but I don't want to be too pro Giants. Is Cam Scatterboo. Like I was really happy they didn't get the chance to take Jeremiah Love. I'm really happy because he might be one of these players that plays for 3 or 4 seasons and does quite well and then disappears, but he's just electric. Like what he does on the pitch is exciting to see. So if he can stay fit, and he had obviously had that terrible injury last year. He's another one who I think will run through brick walls for the team and could be sneaky good in fantasy. I don't think he can be top five, but I saw if I could have him I'm currently drafting in a new dynasty league and I've got him as my RB3. So
mhm.
like I'm over the moon with that.
Yeah, he's definitely someone I think to target at like bottom end running back 2, top end running back 3, just
Yeah,
because we don't know how he's going to come back from that injury. I mean, it was a leg break, wasn't it?
yeah, it
So
was. Yeah,
it's running backs tend to recover quite well from leg breaks. I'm a bit more concerned with like what will happen with Nick Chubb with like an ACL. They're usually
yeah,
a bit more harder to come back from. Um, but yeah, I think I think this year feels like a year where we do have a fairly good number of running backs, which I think helps. I think in a few years, like a number of years, it's been very difficult to pick running backs, or you kind of snap your hand to get them quick. Whereas I think now I think you have the opportunity to move to a more zero running back start when you're doing like redraft leagues because there's a good depth of them now.
yeah.
Um, So yeah, so just before we go on to wide receivers and tight ends, and obviously Fletch has nipped out, but he might come back in time for this. I have a little quiz question that I wanted to pose to you. Um, Now, in looking at these positions, I went back and just had a little sort of like history over the last 4 years. So from 2022 to 2025, at the last sort of top 5 players over the years. Can you name me the only 2 players across the 4 positions, so QB, running back, tight end, and
Yeah.
wide receiver, that have been in the top 5 for every single year? So every single year from 2022 to 2025, there are only 2 players. Can you name those 2 players?
Okay, so I'm guessing Josh Allen's one.
Josh Allen is one. He finished. I think he's actually gone first, second, first, second.
Yeah.
So he's had 2 firsts and 2 seconds.
Okay, so not CMC because of injuries. Don't know. I don't think Jahmyr Gibbs year one. His rookie year was 2022, I think. So I don't think he went in there.
Right, Fletcher. But did you hear the quiz question I posed?
I did not.
Okay,
Oh,
so
I've got the answer, I think.
there are two players. So I've gone back over the last 5 years, the last 4 years, sorry, looking at the top 5. There are 2 players in a standard PPR league that have finished in the top 5 every single year for the past 4 years. Can you name them? Liam's got the first one, which was Josh Allen, finished first, second, first, second. Can you name the other one?
I think I've got it, but I'm gonna give
Look,
give Fletch a sec.
right, I want to see. You go to the normal names. You'd go with like Lamar Jackson, but he was injured last year, so probably wasn't. You'd think Christian McCaffrey maybe, but he was injured one of those years, so wouldn't have made it. Um, as
If I
good as
haven't got it, then I haven't got a clue.
as good as Mahomes is, he's never top 2 in fantasy. He's always a little bit behind that. Bijan Robinson.
Nope.
Is it Travis Kelce?
It is. It's Travis Kelce. He's been a bit of a weird one. He's finished first, third, I think third twice, and then like fifth was one of them. This year he
Yeah,
was
he was he?
I think he
Yeah.
was fifth. So yeah, so those are the only 2 players that have consistently been in the top 5 for the last 4 years, which I think is quite interesting given the fact that there's a few of those names. I think Christian McCaffrey featured 3 of those 4 years, maybe only 2 of them. Um, I, I think maybe someone like CD Lamb, I think, has been in a fair few of them. Obviously, he wasn't in this year. Amon Ra, I think, was in
Yeah.
3 of them.
I was going to say Amon Ra, but then Kelsey came popping into my head for some reason.
Yeah, I think Amon Ra didn't in 2022 because it was his rookie
Yeah.
year.
Yeah, and we had Anthony Lynn as the offensive coordinator that year, and for whatever reason, up until about game 10, he refused to use Amon-Ra St. Brown. And
Hmm.
then I think Ayling got sacked. For a couple of weeks, they'd started targeting Amon-Ra St. Brown anymore, and all of a sudden that's when we started turning up in games, and we all just kind of went, "Okay, this kid's actually good. Why have we not been throwing it to him sooner?
Yeah.
Why has that not been happening?"
So if I go quickly and just have a quick look,
I would have also thought of like for wide receivers, you'd be thinking as well Justin Jefferson, Jahmyr Chase.
Well,
Um,
Jefferson last year was nowhere near. Chase,
yeah,
did he not have an injured year? I know Burrow's been out, so that's affected Chase, but I'm pretty sure he's.
might have done.
I feel like he
so
had a year
Chase,
where he was out for half of it or something like that.
Chase, and Amon Ra were both in the top 10 in 2024. In 2023, Amon Ra was in it, but Chase wasn't. And then in 2022,
20, he missed 5 games.
neither of
Chase
them were in
Yeah,
it.
in 22, Chase missed
But
five
Amon Ra
games.
did finish 7th. Ja'Marr Chase finished 12th.
Yeah,
yeah, 22 missed 5. Yeah,
yeah, 5 games. That'll do it.
So yeah, so we'll move on to wide receiver scenes, Ron. And again, I'll just go through who was there last year. Number 1 was Puka Nakua. Number 2 was Jackson Smith and Jigba. Number 3 was Amon-Ra St. Brown. Number 4 was Ja'Marr Chase, and number 5 was George Pickens.
yeah.
So I'll start with my list of wide receivers. Number 1, this is a bit of a homer one. I've gone for Puka Nakua. Very much similar to what I was saying about Stafford. I just think it's going to be a case of run it back. And with all the off-field antics, I think he's going to have something to prove to everyone around him. I think he is probably going to get the big contract before the season starts. But I think that this is going to be the year that he's going to have to really prove he's the guy. I know we already say he's the guy, but he's going to have to prove to the world that this isn't just a case of him spiraling out and he's, basically just ruined his career. I think he's going to have to want. He's going to want to. I think he's going to have to McVay prove that he can turn the corner and get back to what he's good at. So I think he's going to have another outstanding year. Number 2, I've got Ja'Marr Chase. I think again because I've kind of got Burrow having a resurgence. To me, that means that Chase is going to be in the top 10. We've already mentioned it before. He usually is in the top 5. So I think he's just going to be there again. He's going to have another big year. Number 3, I've got CD Lamb. Again, I think that I know that obviously the situation in Dallas with George Pickens being there, and obviously he's going to take a fair few targets. I just think CD Lamb is one of the best wide receivers in the league, and I think that it doesn't matter that he has George Pickens as his number 2. I still think CD Lamb's going to be an elite talent this again in another year. And again, he's another one. He tends to be consistently in the top 5, or at least in the top 10. So I think he'll do it again. I think Amon-Ra St. Brown, again, he's a consistent performer. Obviously, again, I think that with the differences in the OC, I think probably going to play a big part. And I think he's just going to get back to using Amon-Ra a lot, as consistently as he ever has. And I just think, for me, he is Mr. Consistent. And I think you can always rely on him to be at least in and around, maybe not always, never, not necessarily the number 1 choice, but at least in that bottom end of the top 5. And then finally, I've got JSN. to finish off that. I think that's just purely going to be. I think that the Seahawks aren't going to be necessarily as good next year, but I don't think that's going to impact JSN as much. I think it's more going to be a case of that they're just going to have to put up more points, and that will allow JSN to sort of utilize that. So I think that he's going to be, he's going to be the guy again next year for Sam Darnold. With maybe a slightly harder schedule, he may have to, might have a few more people running at him, but I think it's going to be a case of that he's going to be there anyway. So that's my top 5. Liam, we'll go to you next.
Yeah, I mean, majority of the same names, different orders though. So I've gone Ja'Marr Chase 1, same reasons. Burrow being fit, Ja'Marr Chase is going to be an absolute winner. He's going to be elite at the position. Puka Nacua at number 3. Great point you made. He's hoping to get his contract, so he'll be chomping at the bit to that was a little throwback joke, yeah. But he will be pushing it to obviously to your point, prove to the Rams and McVay that give me the big contract, give me the 5-year big money contract, and I'm not gonna throw it away. I've gone JSN at number 3. I do think my top 3, I think there's very little to choose between them. And I found it really difficult between Chase and Puka Nacua, to be fair. But JSN at 3, and that's primarily down to Sam Darnold and my worry that when will the bubble burst and when will he go back to the Sam Darnold we all know and love? It might not happen, but it's in the back of my head somewhere is I don't want to put all my chips on JSN when you've got 2 other players who the quarterbacks are solid when they're fit and available. Amon-Ra St. Brown at 4. I think he's the top of the next tier. I think he's elite, but I think he's probably the most solid and most consistent of the 4 that I've mentioned so far, except for he probably doesn't quite have the ceiling that a JSN, a Chase, and a Puka Nacua have. But if he was my wide receiver 1, I'd be over the moon. My number 5 is different. So CD Lamb was in my thinking. I was very close to putting him in there, but the Pickens thing has sort of pushed it away for me. Justin Jefferson on talent alone should be in there, but again, I don't know what Kyler's going to be like. And I really like Malik Neighbors, but obviously with him starting the season potentially missing a few games or not quite fully fit, I kind of didn't put him in there. So I've gone for Rashee Rice. And that's purely because Mahomes, they haven't brought in anybody really to change the landscape in the receiving room. And when Rice is available, Mahomes uses him over and over and over again. And I think he might be a bit of a monster in PPR, but I also think he's just going to be the go-to guy and almost become the new Travis Kelce for Patrick Mahomes. It's a little bit out there, but I was looking at his numbers when he came back last year. He obviously missed the first 6 games of the season, but he couldn't train because he was suspended from the league, so he couldn't do any preseason, couldn't do anything like that. So he's literally fresh in week 7. And from about week 8 onwards, he was primarily in the top 10 at the position scoring. He was scoring very well. There was a few down weeks, and obviously Mahomes got injured, which affected the back end of the season. And I think he missed 9 games last year, all told, and he still finished the wide receiver 40. So give him a preseason. Hopefully, he keeps out of trouble, and I think he could be pushing that top 5 if he plays all 17.
Yeah.
Fletch.
1 second. Yeah. So as far as my top 5 wide receivers go, I'm not going to do the Homer thing and put my guy at number 1, obviously. I think every year my number 1 always gets put down as Ja'Marr Chase, and that doesn't change at this moment in time until Ja'Marr Chase gives me a reason to be honest with you, which I don't see happening.
Or he retires.
Or he retires. Yeah, to be fair, do you know what? I would still put him in if he retires. I still think he'd put up numbers retired.
Top 5.
Do UFL credits transfer to...
Unfortunately,
no, I don't think so.
Really.
Because
Or
games
Olympic,
played at different times.
The Olympic credits don't either.
Right, okay, fine then. Right, so maybe I will let go of him if he retires. But no, Ja'Marr Chase, always number 1. I've gone with CD Lamb as my number 2.
Nice.
and just given everything that's gone on with the Cowboys, I still think CD Lamb's up there with one of the very best in this entire game, um, at the wide receiver position, and I think he's in for it this year. Um, Justin Jefferson makes me nervous this year because I don't know who's throwing to him, and I don't trust whoever is throwing to him either way. Whether it be Kyler Murray, whether it'd be JJ
JJ.
McCarthy, or whether it'd be Carson Wentz. That
Yeah.
went, yeah,
Yeah, I
Carson
think
Wentz.
Wentz is there as well.
Um, I don't trust any of those three throwing to him. Unfortunately, I don't trust. I would love to trust JJ McCarthy. Well, no, I wouldn't because he's in my division. Um, but you know,
From a Michigan perspective, you would.
yeah, but until if he leaves the conference, then yeah, I really really want him to do well. Leaves the division, I'll still kind of root for him. So but Justin Jefferson would obviously be in my top three, but I just don't, like I said, just don't trust
Yeah,
who's throwing to him this year. Um, I will put JSN in at number three. I think it's an excellent point on Sam Darnold potentially dropping off, but I got that feeling that, like, I think Sam Darnold's found his home now. And
Yeah.
it's very similar with Daniel Jones, I think, at the quarterback position, in the sense that, like, it's at the Daniel Jones as well, sorry, in just the sense that, like, I think he's somewhere that trusts him, wants him, and will put the appropriate things behind him to succeed. And I think he's responding to it, and it's what, 2 years in a row now that Sam Darnold's been very good. So I'm as much as, yeah, history would generally tell us that he's probably going to drop off. Uh, I don't think that drop off's about to happen yet. We'll see though. Without Clint Kubiak writing his offensive, but doing his offense for him, I don't know. But yeah, just until I see otherwise, I will put Amon-Ra St. Brown in at number four. Especially when you're talking PPRs. I mean, he obviously puts up 1,200, 1,300 yard seasons anyway. But when you're talking PPR, he's Goff's number one target, and he's the one who operates in the areas that Goff is most comfortable throwing to throughout a game. So when you're talking PPR, you're talking, well, that's for the R's, you're getting a lot of P's per R in those PPR leagues. And then at number five, I will slip Justin Jefferson in there, because at the end of the day, um, whoever I trust, whether do or don't trust someone throwing to him, there is one thing I do trust in this world, and it's F it, Jefferson's up there somewhere.
Yeah.
So,
I
and
like it.
again, like when you're looking and you get into the red zone, big body target, safe hands, um, and you F it, Jefferson's up there somewhere. Something that me and Sam have said quite a number of times, on Hurdle of the Line as well throughout the season. It's something you can always rely on. So, he'll always have great value, even in fantasy, just for that.
He's the no Puka because Sam's a Rams fan. You just don't want to stick it to him.
To be fair, I didn't think that through.
He's just there at
I didn't
six,
think of it like
obviously.
that. But it's one of them. I think as far as that top five goes, there are a couple that are absolute staples, which is for me, Jahmyr Chase and Amon-Ra St. Brown, who's never number one but always three to
Yeah.
five. And then any of the other three, I think they're interchangeable. I don't think there's a true
depending
top.
on who gets injured more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
who gets injured, or I don't know who what does change in a scheme, and who sees slightly more targets, who's got someone else come in. And one thing obviously that works in Puka's favour is they didn't go and draft a wide receiver in the first round. Can't remember who they did draft. Obviously, that was just not a big story at all, so no one really remembers that one, and we'll forget that
No,
for him for a bit.
no one ever knows who that's going to be.
I just
All
drafted
I,
him in a league today.
You know what also went under the radar is the fact that we also picked up Matthew Caldwell in the UDFAs, who's a quarterback.
Right, okay.
He was the Texans, but he was the Texas Longhorns backup quarterback to Manning and Quinn Ewers, and we've got him in the door for some reason.
To be fair, no one mentioned that the Lions took Luke Altmaier either. But I don't feel like that's the same thing. Ignore me. It's
No,
fine.
no, I mean
Um,
it's the Puka one. I will always back Puka because I think the last 2 years. I mean, no, not even the last 2 years. The last 3 years of his career, he has been in at least the top three for targets every single year. And I just think that he has developed such a good relationship with Stafford that even if he doesn't pick up a lot of touchdowns, which to be fair, he doesn't get like bucket loads of touchdowns. I think last year he got, was it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. He got 10, which was certainly not even a top, in the top five for touchdowns. He always has the most targets and the most receptions. And
Yeah.
that in a PPR league is massive because if you're getting, I think if I look at his years, I mean, you look at the number of targets, the number of receptions he has, it's in the hundreds. That's
oh, it
100
is.
points off the bat straight away, and that's not
Yeah,
including the yardage that he gets with it. So
and that's not going
I
to
just,
change anytime soon.
yeah, I don't see it changing as long as Stafford's there because he's so reliable. His route running is up there, one of the best in the league, and I just think he's such an easy guy to throw to because especially when you kind of like we were saying, where with JJ, it's kind of throw it there. Justin Jefferson's up there somewhere. He's going to be
Yeah.
down the field somewhere, and he's going to catch it. For me, it's like you need 5 yards, and it's 3rd and 5 or 3rd and 7. Who are you going to give it to? Probably Puka Nakua on there. Throw him a 5 yard, and he'll get you 10, sort of thing. So
Yeah.
I
He's
just think
so
he's
good
he's
against the
always going to be
contested catch as well. Like
there.
you could literally throw it into him in like full coverage, and he somehow comes up with it. Like he's
Yeah.
so like some games last year you're watching, and it was like throw it anywhere and he'll get it. Doesn't matter.
Mm.
Throw it like a meter, 2 meters away from him, and he'll somehow get it.
Yeah. So I know it seems homerish putting him first, and I don't think we've actually ever had a wide receiver double up on the first position. But there's no way that I can't. There's no unless he gets injured, which again is probably the downfall because he does end up finding himself missing parts of games quite consistently. Usually where because he's such a physical guy and he's constantly trying to get the extra yards, he's usually gets himself a little knock somewhere, and then he goes in the dressing room and comes back out and plays and gets another 400 yards. Um, I just think that could be a worry, especially if he gets a big injury. That could be a significant worry for him. But yeah, I don't know. I can't see it. I mean, he also had the lowest snap count of any other team around or any other player around him, which is he only had 68% snap percentage. And the next lowest was Jackson Smith and Jigba with 78
Hmm.
in the top five. So
I wrote that down about
imagine
him.
if he has more snaps.
I know. I did write that down about him. It looked like you see him take a big hit, and it looks like he's injured, or it looks like he's going to be off for a bit. And then 2 plays later, he's back on the pitch, and you're like,
Mm.
anybody else would have been like gone for half the game, and he was like, no, no, put me back in.
Yeah,
So
he seems to be built different, doesn't he?
yeah, he is. Go on then. Your outside shot here. There's quite a few to pick from here, which I think will be quite interesting. Some of the names that should come up or could come up.
Go on,
Mm.
Sam.
If you want some thinking time, I can tell you mine, and then you guys can have a little bit of thinking time.
I think I'm going to go with Chris Olave.
Nice.
And again, this kind of goes off the back of the fact that I think they found their quarterback in Tyler Shook. I think again with the second easiest schedule, Olave is an elite talent. My only issue with him is his injury record, and it's the same. It's what I've got a Saints mate that we sort of chat regularly about, and I said to him today that their offense is looking tasty, but it's made of glass.
Yeah.
And that's my only worry with Olave is that he'll miss significant time. My only thing with that is obviously bringing in Jordan Tyson might help him stay fit because you're not constantly relying on him. which then may see him jump up the board in terms of fantasy points because he's going to be more available. He's going to be more, there's going to be more of him to throw at. So again, he's someone that I probably would be looking at getting into that top five. The only other one that I had, which again, I think it depends on how this plays out, but for me was Amika Egbuka.
Mm.
Because again, he's now obviously going to be the wide receiver one in the Buccaneers. They've still got the same quarterback, and Baker is a great quarterback. Again, my only concern is he did pick up a few injuries and started off like a house on fire, and then completely tailed off after his injury. He's now going to have to be the main guy along with Chris Godwin. So, yeah, he's a very much outside chance for me, in terms of a deep chance, but he's a possibility for me.
Yeah.
One that I find really interesting and something that I mean, when you mentioned by the way there in terms of Chris Olave, right? And it's so crazy just how it's the perception of the Saints being made of glass. And obviously, I don't know any Saints fans. Obviously, that's just something that I don't do. Um, but I think it's going to be it's so much different with Derek Carr not throwing them hospital balls. To see that maybe they're not made of glass. Maybe Derek Carr just has bad intentions for his own teammates when he throws the ball. So Chris Olave might be a very, very, very good shout there because of that very reason. However, I want to go with Malik Neighbors. They obviously, I say the resurgence of Jackson Dart, like he's been in the league for years and spent a few years down. But the up and coming Jackson Dart taking a leap in year two, he's got about a year and a half left in the league before he can't do anything anymore because of concussions. So he'll need to make a stamp as much as he can. And Malik Neighbors is such a brilliant talent that new head coach again, it's not a brand. You're not talking a brand new head coach that they've got in New York. You talk a seasoned veteran head coach who I think will get the best out of Jackson Dart for one, but that will then in turn get the best out of Malik Neighbors. So while I don't exactly think the Giants will be competing to win the NFC East anytime soon, I do think you're going to see a much better team and one that gets the best out of Jackson Dart and Malik Neighbors.
Yeah,
Neighbors is an interesting one.
yeah,
I don't know. Just depends on how he comes back because that injury was horrific. So it was. I mean, the only good thing from this season's perspective is the fact that it happened in week 4. So he's had even longer than even the likes of those who got it in November to get back for week 1.
Mm-hmm.
My concern is, will he come back the same player, as I always do with ACL injuries? I'm just, I'll always be wary to start with whether he'll reach that level again. Maybe being a wide receiver, it probably benefits him a bit more because he doesn't have to be on the field 24/7.
Yeah.
But yeah, again, I like it as a shout. Malik Neighbors is always someone that's, in his rookie year, he was absolutely outstanding. And he has all the talent to get there. It's just whether he'll come back the same player or not.
Yeah, fair shout.
yeah. I think I'm all in on Neighbors. I also like Olave. I mean, he was in some leagues the wide receiver 6, and that was with the start of the season. Was it Spencer Rattler throwing in the ball? So if you've got Tyler Shook all
Yeah.
season, then obviously that helps. My guy is, and this is for you, Fletch. It's Jameson Williams, and
I like that.
I've gone all in on him this off season in quite a few dynasty leagues. His first half of the season last year was shocking, But you mentioned earlier about the OC messing around, not really doing what
Yeah.
he should have been doing, and then Dan Campbell took over play calling, and then all of a sudden Jameson Williams was the wide receiver four for the second half of the season. Um, Obviously, the type of player he is, a lot has to go right for him. He's more of a catch 4 or 5 passes and take 1 or 2 of them to the house kind of guy. But the sort of back end of last year, they were throwing him 5, 6, 7, 8 targets a game. So they're obviously figured something out. And hopefully they go into this season and just continue it on. And if they do, I think JMO will be definitely top 10. And he could be chomping on the heels of the top 5, I think.
I like that one, and I will say this: like, obviously, coming from a Lions fan's perspective here, what we've been crying out, especially through the first couple of years, rookie year, he was out for most of it with the ACL.
Yeah.
His second year, he was suspended for the first bit, not great. Um, we are very, very, very much aware of obviously just the incredible talent that he has. He is the field stretcher, and like you say, he might catch 1 or 2 targets, but they're probably going to get you 30, 40 yards, maybe even take them to the house. But as I'm sure Sam will be more than happy to weigh in on this one, Goff's not the QB who's going to get him that ball very often if he's stretching the field 30 yards down, 40 yards down. Because as much as, yeah, he's got an arm to get it in that general area, 30 yards down the field, Goff's not the most accurate and he's not placing it on a rope half the time. And the amount of times he has to stop and turn and slow down to catch it because Goff's not a deep shot thrower. Um, it's about maybe even taking some of that pressure off Amon-Ra St. Brown and letting Jameson Williams get involved in the shorter game and let the speed do the talking. Do some similar things to what he does with Jahmyr Gibbs. You give Jahmyr Gibbs the ball in a bit of space and just let his speed do the rest. Jameson Williams has got that in abundance. So if we do see more of that, which I think Drew Petzing is more than likely to do that, because if you look at his Arizona Cardinals career as an OC, like they weren't granted you had Kyler Murray as your quarterback, you're very much handicapped there. And Jonathan Gannon is your head coach, also very, very big handicap for you. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how they utilize Jameson Williams a little bit more in some of the other elements of the game, and on the see him on the jet sweeps and the end arounds and all that sort of stuff, which are usually very successful. And Drew Petzing seems more like the type of person to get Jay Moore involved there.
Yeah, I mean, I've always been very high on Jameson Williams coming out of college. He was someone I drafted a lot of. And even when people were picking up a lot of players, he was always in my wide receiver 3, 4 conversations. Because he reminds me of Tyler Lockett in that he is boom or bust. It's not like he's not going to give you consistent points. He's probably going to, he's an excellent flex player, to have. And I've got him in a fair few leagues. But as obviously Fletcher's already mentioned with Goff, is my only concern with him is if they are going to use him as a deep ball threat. The issue that I have with Goff, and I've said it for a number of years, even when he was at the Rams, his his perception of the game, it can be quite slow in sort of going through his reads. And I think that the problem is when you have your deep ball threat unless you've schemed out a play where you're going to be immediately going to the deep ball, it's usually your third or fourth option. And I think with the likes of Amon-Ra St. Brown, Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs is sort of your 1, 2, and 3. If Jameson's going to be your 3 or 4, my worry is that Jameson Williams is too fast for Goff. And that's where I'm not saying that Goff can't sling the rock. He can, but as you tend to notice, it needs to be his first read, and he basically needs to bomb it down there and just hope that Jameson's fast enough to get there, which he is, rather than see that he's open and try and sling it 50 yards, and Jameson has to then change his route and that. So that's my only concern with Jameson Williams, is that in the scheme that he's in, I don't know if they're going to utilize him as they need to, or if Goff's going to see him as an option. But he very much is boom or bust. So he has if he can be more boom than bust, he has the potential. But I like having him as my flex receiver.
What happened at the back end of last year though? In the last 6 games, he had 10 targets, 9 targets, 10 targets, eight targets, I think. Then it was 3, and then 8 again. So something changed in that, and they went, instead of being this deep threat, just throw him 3 balls a game and hope he gets a couple of them. They obviously found something out, and in those, I think he broke 100 yards on 3 or 4 of the games. So I was around about the 100-yard mark. So if they find that and they can use that, and they think that's a recipe for success, then he's got every chance. If he's just this this long home run hitter, then I think he'll go back to being boom or bust, and he'll probably end up being about wide receiver 20.
I think you said it
Yeah, I
best,
mean,
to be fair, yourself there. Sorry, Sam. I think you've already said it best there, Liam. Dan Campbell started calling plays.
Yeah.
And
And you won games on the back of it. Like, it wasn't like he started calling plays and you were losing. He took over play calling, you started winning the
oh,
games.
he started taking he started taking over play calling against we were terrible, and then he called them on against the Commanders, and we absolutely obliterated the Commanders that game. And I think that's it. It's a different play caller and someone who I think was better at play calling than the OC at the time. So
I think the
I
thing
think
with him
that's
though is the biggest thing about him is the fact that he is, and this is where the boom or bust comes in, because you look at when he was uh, in that sort of top 10 receiver grouping, his yards per catch were 16 and a half, 19, 20, 22, 20, 14, 20, 14, 18 and a half, 12. So that's where he is that boom or bust. It's just how often can
Mm,
you get the boom out of him? And in the right scheme, you can get a lot of boom out of him. It's just that you're going to have to deal with the fact that in a few games, like say week 1, 5.75 was his yards per catch.
yeah.
Week 2, granted, his yards per catch were 54 because he only had 2 targets or 2 receptions, 4 targets for 108 yards. So he he's one of those players that I think you've just got to utilize him a bit more, and I think it can be quite difficult because of his speed that you think he is just a racer over the top. And I mean, Amon Ra's not slow; he can run, but they use him as a slot receiver because that's what he's good at. And I do think that Jameson has the potential to be good. It's just I think that when you've got such safe hands in the short game in Amon Ra and Sam Laporta and Jahmyr Gibbs sort of doing your screenplays, it kind of leaves Jameson on the edge to have to make the big plays. But if they can start involving him a bit more, again, taking the load off Amon Ra or taking him off Sam Laporta, then they may get the most out of him. It's hard to see him not be a boom or bust.
Yeah.
Right, we'll move on to the final position in tight ends. So again, looking at last year's tight ends, it was Trey McBride number 1, and I will say resoundingly number 1. He beat the next person by nearly over 100 points more. In second was Kyle Pitts. Shock, never saw him being number 2. Travis Kelce at 3, Tyler Warren at 4, and Harold Fannin at 5. Fletch, we'll start with you. Who have you got as your top 5 tight ends for 2026?
great. Throw tight ends at me first. Thanks, Sam.
Well, I can tell I'm a tight end guy. I can always take the tight ends if you want.
You're okay. I think Trey McBride obviously number 1. I don't see that changing much anytime soon. The only thing dependent on whoever's actually throwing him. Who's even throwing him the ball in Arizona this year? Do
Should
they
be
have
Brissett.
It'd be
Jacoby Brissett? Okay, so no,
again.
I'm fine with that. I'm happy with that for Trey McBride to continue to be number one tight end. Brock Bowers at number two because he will have a bit more of a more competent quarterback. Either whether it's Kirk Cousins or Mendoza, there'll be a somewhat more competent quarterback than Geno Smith being play called by Pete Carroll. I think that any version of this year's situation is better than last year's for him. And I was also shocked, it's by the way, at Kyle Pitts being number two, but it seemed like a really down year for fantasy tight ends in
Yeah.
general. I Similar to JJ McCarthy, I don't want this to be the case because I don't want him to be good, but I also do kind of really want him to be good. I think Colston Loveland will be up there at number three. Caleb Williams and Colston Loveland started to build a really good relationship towards the end of last year. As we generally tend to tell within the NFL, we did it at the end of the first year doing Hurdle the Line. Josh Allen started to find Khalil Shakir a little bit. Then last year, Josh Allen and Khalil Shakir had a good relationship, continued throughout the season. So I don't see any reason why, in this instance, once a QB gets a good relationship with a pass catcher, that relationship tends to get better and they've got another offseason to work at it. So I think Colston Loveland could take a real jump this year. Tyler Warren, again, depending if Daniel Jones, how much of the season he does start, actually, he's very, very good. I can't wait to see how that relationship continues to develop. My other one that, like, I don't even have this for college reasons to want to be successful. I really, 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 really hope I'm wrong on this one, but it's Tucker Kraft from the Green Bay Packers because I think before he got in, I want to know where was he at last year before he got injured.
I think he was
Because
tight end
he
three or
was
four.
putting up some damn good numbers last year before he got
So,
injured. Because I was using him in fantasy game day quite a lot, and he was money every time.
He was in the top three or four, something like that. He was
Yeah, yeah.
really good.
yeah, so tight end three, I think.
Okay. Well, we'll run off three. I think that sounds good. Sounds good enough to me there. The coming back off injury, someone Jordan Love trusts, and I think unfortunately the Packers will just benefit from Jordan Love having a genuinely good target to throw to. So for me, it'd be Tucker Kraft. The only reason he's not slightly higher than Tyler Warren is because he's got to come off an injury.
Yeah.
Although, again, the handicap for Warren is he's got to wait for Daniel Jones to come back from an injury. So we'll see. Although,
Liam,
sorry, I was going to say, although Tyler Warren, at least at no point this season, will have a 45-year-old man on retire and then start throwing the ball to him. So he might
Don't say
benefit
very,
that.
very true.
either way. Yeah, to be fair,
You
I
don't know
shouldn't
that
say
yet.
that. Tom Brady might find a way to
Yeah.
somehow come back and then he'll play for the Colts.
My list, I mean, pretty similar. So McBride at one, assuming Brissett and the contract debacle that's going on gets sorted and he is the man there. I can't see any other situation. My only thing I will say about McBride is if the Cards aren't having a great season and they're out the playoff hunt, will they drop Brissett for Carson Beck? Was it they just drafted?
They
Well,
did draft Carson Beck, but
base
I think they've also got another guy there as well.
they've got Minshew there
Um,
as the backup, but they're
yeah,
not gonna go
Gardner
on.
Minshew.
Minshew's not the future, so will they drop Brissett in like week 14 to see what Beck does? And if you're in the playoffs, that is not a good time to have your main guy being
I
thrown to
still
by a
think
rookie.
though that McBride will benefit because you need. I always and I've said this from the start is you tend to see a pattern that rookie quarterbacks overutilize their tight ends because
Yeah,
they need that early that sort of like reliability in that, and that tends to be the tight end because they're a bigger body, so you can kind of throw it to them anywhere and they're going to at least catch it and
yeah,
take
Bigger,
a hit.
bigger body, and they're running the quicker, easier routes that you can
yeah,
get the ball out to fast. And that's something that obviously one, if any rookie has a problem with anything, it's processing the NFL at the speed the NFL, the
Mm.
professional game breaks. So having, tight ends, like you say, not only are they a bigger body, safer pair of hands, more reliable, but they're also like your other option then is probably once there is a 350-pound defensive nose tackle in your face, the other option is F it, Jefferson's up there somewhere. And unless you play for the Vikings,
Mm,
Jefferson is not up there somewhere for you.
yeah,
The only I agree with you totally, but if say that rookie's only throwing like 150 to 180 yards in a game, that's obviously going to limit Trey McBride his output. But I do agree. I don't think he drops off the cliff. I don't think he goes from potentially 15 to 20 points a game to two or three. I still think he'll have a really solid baseline. But if you're when you're going into your playoffs, you want in your guys, your stud guys to show up, and that's my only thing. But I've got hope that Jacoby Brissett does a good job and they keep him in all season. Two, Brock Bowers, better situation, better quarterbacks. Whoever it is, whoever's throwing the ball, it's going to be better. Um, and I just think he's an elite player. And also, who's their pass catchers there? I mean, they've not really got. They've got. I've classed it. They've got quite a few wide receiver twos and threes. They've got no wide receiver one. So
yeah.
therefore, he.
I think Trey Tucker and Jack Becker, they're two
Yeah,
starters,
and
and then
Jalen Naylor they just signed as well.
he's
So like they
awful.
are genuine wide receiver twos, threes, aren't they? They're not really.
Mm,
So they're not necessarily competing with Bowers for targets. So he jumps in at two, and he could quite easily beat McBride this year, but you need to see it first. Colston Loveland at three. Basically, what you guys have said, what Fletch said, his connection with Caleb Williams at the back end of last season was really good. It almost felt like he was taking over and it was becoming his team. So that's obviously exciting to see. And DJ Moore leaving obviously helps because he takes targets, so therefore that helps there. I've got Tyler Warren at four, and the only reason he's probably not at three is because of the Daniel Jones situation, the injury. So who knows what's going to happen there. And then I was umming and ahhing, and I did have Tucker Craft in there, but because of his injury, and I'm not sure when he'll be back, I left him out, and I went for the old man, old Mr. Old Reliable, Travis Kelce. I think he'll do
mm,
another top five season. I don't think he'll be necessarily anywhere near what he was, but I think he'll be consistent and I think he'll have a really solid floor. And I just think he'll just sneak into that top five.
interesting. Um, yeah, I mean the top four have pretty much got the same, but in a slightly different order. Um, I'm going with Brock Bowers number one, purely because of the fact that it's the QB situation's better. There's no other targets, and in his rookie year, he was the tight end number one in his rookie year. So for me, I think he could get back up to that. I do think it's a coin flip between him and McBride. Um, I just think the supporting cast in Arizona is slightly better with having Marvin Harrison Jr. and Michael Wilson there,
Yeah.
and that could potentially lose him a few targets. Whereas Bowers, I think he's in a much better position to have less people around him. Number three, I've actually got Tyler Warren. I think he proved enough last year to think that he'll kick on and do a lot better. Um, I think that as long as Daniel Jones is playing, he's going to be the main guy. But we've seen him used in the running game, in the screenplays, in all sorts. I think he's just going to get used as that gadget player everywhere,
Yeah.
and be used pretty much as he was last year, but more. Number four, I have got Colston Loveland. Again, as we sort of already said, back end of the year, he started to look like he was really sort of building that relationship with Caleb Williams. Again, I think he's the same as Cole Kmet, but better. So I think he's just going to kick on. No shade on Cole Kmet. I think Cole Kmet's he was a good tight end, just unreliable. Whereas I think Colston's going to be a little bit more reliable. And I've actually gone with my fifth as being Jake Ferguson. He finished sixth last year. He obviously started off very much like with Tucker Craft, like a house on fire. Got his injury and then came back and sort of tailed off. I have a feeling he could be another one that we start to see a bit more of. Probably with the likes of CeeDee Lamb being back, we probably might see less of him.
Yeah.
So it is kind of like a Willie won't he? But I was stuck with Tucker Craft because I don't think he's going to be ready for week one. and I think it's going to take him a fair bit of time to get back to the level that he needs to. And with the wide receiver core in Green Bay looking a little bit more like a settled wide receiver core, obviously Deontay Wicks left and Romeo Dobbs have left. It's kind of Christian Watson and
Jaden Reed and Golden.
Jalen Reed left. So I think that they're a bit more settled in who they've got as targets, but more focus on those targets. So I think Kraft I think he'll be up there, but I just don't think he'll creep into that top five. So I went with Ferguson just because I think he could be a bit more reliable in that sense. I was torn because there's a few that I think could be in that fifth spot.
Yeah.
So I kind of just went with my safe option, really.
I was thinking Ferguson, but you touched on it. CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens are the first mouths to feed, aren't they? So that he wasn't in there, and then there's a few others. But I've gone someone different for my outside shot, so I'll let you guys go first, and then I'll see if you've got the same guy as me.
My outside guy is the tight end in the Chargers, Aronde Gadsden. I think he looks like a phenomenal talent and came out of nowhere. But I think again, it's their receiving core needs help, and I think he is the perfect guy to help with that. I know they've obviously got Keandre Lambert-Smith, who was in his rookie year, and it looks like he's going to be in there. Brennan Thompson they signed this year, I believe, in free agency, in the draft, sorry. And then you've still got Lad McConkey and Quentin Johnson and Trey Harris there. So there's a lot of players, but I think that, again, without knowing how that O-line is going to hold up, I think having a reliable tight end is something that Herbert will need, especially while the likes of Joe Alton that are trying to get back to full fitness. So I think that's maybe something to kind of look at. And also with the fact that, we don't know how Amari and Campton's going to hold up. So again, there may be a reliance on going to the tight end to kind of pick up yards. And he had a very good first year. I thought it was quite surprising. He kind of came out of nowhere. I don't think he even played. Well, he played a lot at the start of the year, but didn't really sort of do anything. And then had a sort of a very short spell in the middle where he looked like a very good tight end, and then kind of fell off again, which kind of falls in line with the Chargers as a whole. Just kind of fell off a cliff, even though they managed to make the playoffs. So yeah, he's my outside guy. Along with I'll mention the other one because it might be someone that you might have on your mind. So I won't mention it just yet, but there is someone else that I do want to mention.
I feel like personally, saying Jahmyr Gibbs in running back is not a homer pick for me. He's consistently one of the top running backs. Same with Amon-Ra St. Brown and wide receivers. However, I do think, given that he's not had the greatest couple of years in terms of fantasy, I'm allowed to say this now as a bit of a homer pick. Give me Sam Laporta back, please, in the top end of fantasy football. As we've mentioned, Detroit Lions have a brand new head coach. Not brand new head coach, sorry, brand new offensive coordinator, and that will hopefully see something go back a little bit more to the year 1, year 2 under Ben Johnson, where I think that was very much Dan Campbell's offense with Ben Johnson's spin, if that makes sense. Not to take anything away from what Ben Johnson did for that offense, and obviously we've seen how good he is with the Bears, so you can't exactly take away from the fact that he had a lot to say in that. But I do think the general blueprint was Dan Campbell's. And I think last year with the offensive coordinator that we had, it kind of strayed a little bit from the blueprint of what the Lions were supposed to be and what Dan Campbell wanted it to be. And I think very few encapsulate that as well as Sam Laporta. Amon-Ra St. Brown, I think, is the number one person to encapsulate all of that. But I do think Sam Laporta is right in there, right behind him as someone who, like I say, encapsulates exactly what the Detroit Lions are supposed to be under Dan Campbell. So I really, really do think that Sam Laporta has a really good shot this year to go back and be one of the top tight ends in the league. But that is obviously at this point still a remains to be seen more than anything.
I like the pick. He's sort of shown it once before, hasn't he? Was it his rookie year? He was the tight end one, so
Yeah.
you can get back to that. I'm with you though, Sam. I had a Ronde Gadsden, same reasons. I just hope they don't bring back Keenan Allen because I kind of feel like he sort of takes some of the targets away, and if they don't, then you could see Gadsden sitting in there in the second or third receiver for Justin Herbert. So I had him. I'm trying to think if there's anybody else to really discuss. I mean, there's Harold Fanning, but I don't like the Cleveland Browns quarterback situation, but he might well just be Mr. Reliable. But yeah, I'd probably say Gadsden would be the one. He'd be the one I'm targeting in some drafts now. Dalton Kincaid as well, obviously. Hope he can fulfill potential and hoping he becomes either, if he's not, Josh Allen's number one target, maybe number two. But he's constantly injured, and I don't think finished a full season yet. So there's
Yeah, he's
big
he's
doubts
again
on that.
he's too inconsistent for me. I
Yeah.
think he needs to find his consistency. The one that I wanted to mention, this is a real outside shot, but I think the move itself, because he's just made a move in the off season, and I think it's going to be massive for him and could be massive for his career in terms of lifting off the ground, is Isaiah Likely.
Yeah, okay.
I think he could be a real dark horse for maybe not top five, but maybe looking at sort of top 10. Obviously, moving to the Giants. Again, similar situation. Jackson Dart's a young quarterback. He's going to need to have reliable hands. And whilst Malik Neighbors is still working his way back into full fitness and getting match ready and such, Likely could be a very good target. And we saw him when he was at the in the limited time that he played for the Ravens. He was a solid tight end. He was just always sat behind Mark Andrews. So I think now that he's out of that shadow and he's kind of his own guy now, I think he could really step up. So he's someone that I'm probably looking at as a tight end too in a fair few leagues, just kind of thinking, oh, I can probably sneak him in and he might be a good option. And at the end of the day, if it doesn't work out, well, it doesn't work out. It doesn't really matter too much. So he's one that I'm going as a real outsider. Okay, so I think that's everything. We've gone through all the positions. I think for next week, if I remember rightly, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be having a few guests on next week. I won't say any more than that, but we are going to be having at least one, if not two guests on next week to go through a few things. So, guys, it was lovely speaking to you again and going through this. Again, just a reminder, check all the socials out, and we'll probably see a lot of our picks go out on the socials. So again, look them up, comment on them, tell us if we're idiots or not. I don't mind; doesn't bother me. I'm still right at the end of the day, especially when it comes to tight ends.
AAW_NFL. That's all you need to say. Any social, apart from Facebook, we don't have individual Facebooks for that. But Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, AAW_NFL.
There you go, guys. Have a great evening, and I will see you all next week.
Thank you very much.
See you later.